And my best friend is on the side of Highway Route 66, projectile vomiting, bent at the waist, hands on his knees, when a cicada bug, the size of a small bird, dive bombs down the front of his shirt, and then all hell breaks loose. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. I got to back it up here for a moment. I don't typically tell stories like this on the podcast very often, but it has a point, and I can already tell that this is going to be one of my favorite episodes ever, and that's saying a lot out of hundreds of episodes that we've done. And the topic here today is why a man must adventure. So let me take you back in time. I'm 24 years old, just a few years removed from college, but very much in the college mindset. Living in Hoboken, New Jersey, a group of the four of us decide we want to take a road trip down to Washington, D.C. to see some of our old fraternity brothers. So the four of us get in the car, we drive down. That whole weekend, we get lit up. Do what we used to do, right? Just drink all weekend, party, act like idiots. And my best friend, to protect the innocent, we're going to give him a name to cover him up for this episode. And I'm just going to pick this name out of thin air. Usually the name is Rick, but today we're going to call him Gary. And that's an inside joke between me and Gary. So Gary decided to really let it rip this weekend, right? Like he drank probably his body weight on that Friday night, and Saturday night, he didn't even go to sleep. So it's Sunday morning. We are facing a long road trip back, 5.5, 6 hours from DC to Hoboken. And one of our, I think it was me maybe, who came up with the idea, the bright idea of going to Taco Bell so that we could soak up our booze on our drive back home. Mind you, one of the guys in our 4-person crew was like so annihilated from the night before that he like was passed out in the backseat of the car for the entire road trip. Missed this entire story I'm about to tell you. Like if you've ever seen the movie Half Baked, where there's the guy on the couch, just like passed out all the time, this was him, backseat of the car. So we get to Taco Bell. It's like 11 o'clock, I don't know, in the morning. And all of a sudden, every once in a while, I have access to divine inspiration. Like these creative ideas just flow through me. And this one idea that came to me, one of my best of all time, I can't even claim it as my own. It just came to me. And I looked at my buddy Gary and I said, hey buddy, if you can eat an entire Grande meal, I will pay for it. And like, without even thinking about it, he agreed to it. Now, let me just set the context for you. If you don't know what a Taco Bell Grande meal is, it is some combination of 10 soft tacos, hard tacos, bean burritos, and then a Mexican pizza and a Nachos Bel Grande. So yes, basically, all I put up was $10, $10 to see this man do one of the most disgusting and repulsive human acts of indecency that you could ever possibly imagine. And so, game on. When the tray shows up, I mean, it's like a mountain of artery clogging hideousness. So like the three of us, actually me and my other buddy who's driving that day, like we're giddy to watch Gary take this pile of food down. Now he gets into his first like 3 or 4 tacos, bean burritos, whatever. And he's like getting full and he's like, guys, I can't do this anymore. So as a group of 24-year-old guys, what do? We shame him into continuing. I'm not proud of that. That's how we were back then. And then he like digs in, finds this like second wind, third wind of power, and he just goes in and plows through this meal. Now it's disgusting, right? Like he's taking bites of tacos and like the meat, the dog meat is falling out on the tray. I remember there was like this family who comes in. They look like they were dressed up. They just come from a church. Like they put their trays down at the table right next to us. They took one look at him. They slowly picked their tray up and went to the furthest side of the Taco Bell. And like, we're watching this thing this monstrosity the entire time, but didn't want to be anywhere near it. Long story short, Gary, man of his word, stomach of steel, finishes this whole thing. And it was quite a sight to see. It was kind of extraordinary. So we enjoyed it. We get in the car. Get on Route 66. We're on the road for 10 minutes. I'm riding shotgun. My one buddy's driving. The guy on the couch is passed out in the back. And then Gary's sitting in the back seat. When all of a sudden, I see like from my left side, I see this like face move up in between the driver's seat and mine. And it's Gary. He goes, I need you guys to pull over. And the driver's like, dude, we just got on the road, man. We got a long way ahead of us. I'm not pulling over. He's like, I really need you to pull over, man. And he's like, dude, sit the fuck back. Like, we're not pulling over. We got a long drive. And I looked at Gary's face. He was pale. And I'm like, dude, pull over. He's going to blow. So our driver pulls over to the side of the road. No sooner does the car come to a stop, Gary launches out of the car. He jumps out of the car right up near the side of my window and projectile vomits everywhere. Crimson red. And it's going on for like an ungodly amount of time. And then finally, when he's finished, he's like, bent at the waist, hands on his knees, just looking at this pile on the ground. And he goes, I think I can see my lung. And as soon as he says that, this cicada bug, the size of a small bird, dive bombs down his shirt. And like you could see this thing flapping around, and he freaks, lets out this scream. He tries to take his shirt off, and he grabs it with both hands and he pulls it up over his head, but like the shirt gets stuck on his elbows over his head. So it's like he's spinning around doing pirouettes on the side of 66. These cars are driving by, like slowing down and honking the horn. And the cicada bug flies away. He finally gets the shirt off the top of his head. And my God, guys, it was one of the most incredible, like every once in a while, life just gives you a moment. And that was ours. Now, I remember this story not only because it was one of the favorite experiences of my life, but was also one of the last stories of its kind that I ever had. There's a period of time in a man's life, a boy's life and a man's life, where he's accumulating these adventurous, crazy stories. And then at a certain point, those stories stop, right? And then you kind of transition to getting into just retelling those old stories, but not creating new ones. You know what I'm talking about? I remember like in my early stages of my professional career, we used to throw it down after work and did some stuff and created these adventures and experiences. But then over the course of time, like whenever we'd go out and responsibilities had gotten bigger at work and at home, we just tamed it down a lot. And the more and more we got together, the more and more we were rehashing these old stories. Same things when I got together with my groups of friends. We'd like tell these great stories of the glory days, but weren't creating any new ones. Now, part of that is called fucking growing up. Like a grown man should not be going on a weekend bender, devouring a Taco Bell Grande meal, throwing up on the side of Highway Route 66 with his like bare chest, spinning around on the highway. That's called growing up. And at the same point in time, we still have this deep craving for adventure, and that seems to dwindle as we get older. And it kills men's souls. And so what we're here to talk about today is, what does grown-up adventure look like? We certainly know what juvenile male adventure looks like. I just gave you one prime example of that. But what does grown-up adventure look like? Let's first define what adventure is, and then we're going to talk about why it's so important to have in your life. So the definition of adventure is an unusual and exciting, typically hazardous experience or activity, especially the exploration of unknown territory. I love that last part, especially the exploration of unknown territory, right? Now, adventures are where you get to feel that sense of freedom, right? Maybe you have that right now, or maybe you don't. But that feeling of freedom, like anything can happen, you get to explore that unknown territory. There's that risk of danger, right? That typically hazardous experience where we don't know, can something go wrong? There's the promise of potential reward. And then the payoff of discovering something new. That's unique, guys. Let me run through that list again. Adventures provide that feeling of freedom, exploring unknown territory, the risk of danger, the promise of reward or the potential of reward, and the payoff of discovering something new. Now think about this. As we get older, as we move on into our lives, as there are more and more responsibilities, maybe we can afford nicer dinners, go on nicer vacations. Maybe you've even gone on a safari to Africa, but it's all so predictable. You never get out of the fucking Jeep, right? It's not dangerous. You got these guides who are making sure that you're okay, taking pictures, clicking from distances. You know what's going to happen. It's all safe. It's not unknown. It's not hazardous potentially. And so what starts to happen to us when that sense of adventure is gone? And I'll answer that in a few minutes. Now, let me take you back in time to when you were a boy, right? When you were a child, can you remember the adventures you took? They were everywhere. They were all the time. I knew that when I grew up, I grew up in a strict environment. My parents were amazing people, but they had a lot of rules. And so I knew whenever I was able to get outside the house, outside of their rules, I was already exploring unknown territory. And there was the risk of danger of getting into trouble. I would always explore the woods, a few blocks away from my house where there was no oversight. There was no adults, for God's sake, for the first time in my life, no adults telling me what to do. We used to blow up quarter sticks of dynamite, right? I remember climbing this tree that had fallen over with my buddy Dan, and we stepped on a beehive, and the swarm of bees were chasing us, and we got stung like crazy. And Dan was allergic to bees. We had to go off to the hospital. I mean, crazy shit, but adventurous. We felt alive. Gentlemen, you need adventure because it keeps your fire lit, keeps you in love with life, and it feeds your soul. Think of how important that is. Adventure keeps your fire lit. It keeps you in love with life, the unknown territory, life constantly fascinating you, and it feeds and fuels your soul. But what happens to a man when he no longer has adventure in his life? That fire starts to dim. He lives in a sea of sameness. Even vacations are no longer quite as exciting. Maybe they're relaxing. Maybe you went and saw some beautiful shit, but you kind of been there and done that, right? You haven't explored really entirely unknown territory, maybe geographically unknown territory, but how about inner world territory that lit something up inside of you? You come back a different and changed man. When was the last time that shit happened? Right? This is really important, guys. And so it begs the question, what happens in your life that kills adventure? And I think the easy scapegoat for what kills adventure in your life is a growing sense of responsibility. But I'm here to convince you that it's not responsibility that kills your adventure. It's your lack of ingenuity. So here's the deal. As you get older and more responsible at work, maybe you have a family, maybe you have kids, you can't go and fuck off like you used to, right? If you think about the story I started with here today, we had no one to care about but ourselves. So you can go on a 48-hour bender, come back destroyed, devastated, kill your gastrointestinal tract, be hungover for the next 3 days recovering from that, and the only person that you are sabotaging is yourself. Which I've got a lot of things to say about, but it's a lot easier to do that than when you have a family or when you're leading an organization, right? Or you have responsibilities at work. You can't do that shit anymore. And so we can easily scapegoat responsibilities for the lack of adventure in our lives. I think that's taking the easy way out. What I believe is we don't know as grown men what adult adventure looks like, what mature adventure looks like. We know what juvenile adventure looks like. Not giving a shit about anyone but ourselves. We throw complete caution to the wind. And many times we come back from that actually a lesser man. You know what I mean? I love my buddy Gary. We've got a great story. I can't tell you that he walked away from that experience feeling like an elevated human being. You know what I'm saying? Certainly gave us a lot of laughs over the course of time, but I'm sure he's not looking at that in one of his proudest moments. Probably didn't use that story to court his future wife, But there's an opportunity here to take a deeper look at, well, how do we create adventure in a responsible way as an adult? And I'm just going to give you one thing to hone in on. This is the simplest thing to hone in on. Create adventures where you come back a better man. That's the number 1, 2, and 3 criteria. Create an adventure where you come back a better man. That's going to come especially in handy for you family men, right? Who feel like you can't go away, you can't spend time with your buddies. Maybe you're going on a golf trip, or maybe you've wanted to go on that golf trip, but you can't. Oftentimes, maybe you come back a better man, a little bit more peaceful, whatever. Not really growing on that trip. You show your spouse, when you come back from adventure, and you're a more engaged husband, a more engaged father, right? You're a better leader at work. When you come back a better man, they'll send you on more fucking trips. Get the hell out of here. Come back. We see how much better you are. I've seen the proof of this in the men's work that I run. The men who have gone on these adventures with me in the inner work sphere, in this inner work realm, when they come back as a better husband, a better father, a better leader, they get sent on these. Their companies pay them for it. They will pay for the adventures themselves. And remember, these adventures allow you to feel that sense of freedom, explore unknown territory, that risk of danger, that potential of reward, that payoff of discovering something new about you. So what could be potential adventures you could take as a responsible adult? How about taking a cross-country road trip? How about negotiating a work sabbatical? There was a woman who I used to coach, a 50-year-old woman at one of the largest investment companies. And this was back before my Porngate days, where I basically alienated all my corporate clients. But this woman had never taken a vacation more than 2 weeks. She negotiated a sabbatical with her employer. I think it was for 45 days or 30 days, something along those lines, where she got a chance with her husband to travel the world, to adventure to all these places unknown to her and her husband, and to experience a sense of freedom that she hadn't had in 30 years of professional work. A sabbatical is a great way to create an adventure. I went on a 90-day radical sabbatical. When I left my 15-year corporate career, before I started my new business, 90 days, Thailand, Bali, Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia. Did a 10-day silent meditation. Got on a helicopter to the top of these private mountains in New Zealand, backpacked down. There were these adventures. Go on a retreat. Take a meditation retreat for 3 days. If you've never done a meditation retreat, you're going to explore some unknown territory without question. Right? Go on a men's retreat. You've never been on one before. Or go on one that you haven't been on before. Take a spirit quest. You can also do a psychedelic experience. You ever want to try ayahuasca? It's legal in Costa Rica. You can go down to the Soltara Healing Center. I'll link that in the show notes. About to head down there with a group of military veterans to work on PTSD. That is going to be like a psychedelic experience is an adventure. You're going to explore some unknown territory. There's the risk of danger. That's where you start to feel your life again. Guys, a man who is aspiring to live a great man life must have adventure. It keeps your fire lit. It keeps you in love with life. It feeds your soul. And one more thing here that prevents you from having an adventurous life is not surrounding yourself with other men who are creating adventures that are responsible, that bring you back a better man. And I have to thank my boy Joe, who's my fascial stretch massage therapist. He's the guy who runs Premier Sports Recovery, keeps my body tuned up. He's amazing. He said, I'd love to go on these adventures, but the guys in my life, he didn't say knuckleheads, but I kind of filled in the blank. I'm like, knuckleheads? These are the guys, all they want to do is go to Vegas and get annihilated and hit on women, even though they're, married or engaged or, in a committed relationship. And I'm not saying that you can't go to Vegas and blow off some steam, but if that's your only definition of an adventure and you come back depleted, tired, exhausted, having scattered your sexual energy instead of bringing it back to your partner, you're not coming back a better man. You need to surround yourself with men who can go on these mature, masculine, adult adventures where you come back a better man. That's where inner work comes in. That's where being part of a community like ours comes in. That's why you got to join the Great Man Within Facebook group if you haven't already. That's why we're running these masterminds, which you need to learn more about. These are the adventures that we go on. 2 weeks ago, I took a group of 4 men to upstate New York, guys from our mastermind, and we did a psychedelic experience together. We bonded. We adventured. These men went home better men. I got countless stories for you. So here's the last thing I want to leave you with. Look at your horizon. Look at the next 3, 6, 12 months of your life. Do you have anything that qualifies as an adventure on your future horizon? And make sure that fucking standard is high for what you classify as an adventure. Not a vacation that's predictable. Not just because you're going to a new place that you've never been to before. I'm talking about the criteria where you feel a sense of freedom, exploring unknown territory, that risk of danger, the promise of potential reward, the payoff potentially of discovering something new about yourself, where you can come back home a better man, right? Like an evolved man, not just because like you come back a little bit more peaceful. You're coming back an evolved, elevated man. If there's nothing on your future horizon like that, then you need to get more involved in our community. This is what we are doing. This is what we are building. These are the challenges that we put men through. These are the adventures that we're going to be taking in person now that the pandemic is lifting. We can do it responsibly. So you need to get involved. Get in our Facebook group. Start asking around about some of our masterminds. And when you're ready to go on that next adventure, you know where to find me.